Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Level 4 Prisons. The strong don't always survive. I'm going to have to talk a little bit loud now because I don't think my phone is that good, and maybe you can't hear me that well. Plus, the environment that I'm in right now with these cars and everything passing by. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit louder. I'm going to talk about 8 rules on a Level 4 180 yard that can save your life. You must abide by these rules, because if you don't, you can lose your life. More than likely, you will lose your life, a limb, an eye, an ear, all of your teeth. Something's going to be missing when you come back home, should you make it home, if you transgress against these rules. No one is bigger than these rules. No one is above these rules. As soon as you hit the Level 4 180 yard, they're going to tell you about these rules. They're going to explain them to you. Your friends, your car, your gang, your faction, they're going to let you know these are the rules. Should you break them, this is going to happen. This is what's going to happen should you break these rules. Rule number 1. No drugs on credit. No getting drugs on consignment from someone from another race or another faction. When I say faction, what I mean is the blacks, we don't have a universal shot caller. The blacks, we don't have the same structure as the Southsiders, which are the Mexicans, the Hispanics, or the white boys, or even the others for that matter. The blacks, we have different factions within one car. For example, you have the Crip car, you have the Blood car, people who are Crips, people who are Bloods. Within that Crip car, you have different factions. You have the neighborhoods. That's the East Coast Crips, the Rolling 60 Crips, the Rolling 40 Crips. They're all together. Over here you have the gangster car, the gangster Crips, the 8-rate gangsters, the 4-rate gangsters, etc. That's the gangster car. Over here you may have the West LA car, Venice Showline, Schoolyard, etc. That's the West LA car. So they're all Crips, but there are different factions within that Crip body. The same for the street. You have a Crips, but you have different sets of Crips. You cannot buy drugs without money from someone of another faction. You cannot sell drugs to someone if they do not have the money. That's the rule. Do not sell drugs to anyone on credit, on consignment, particularly another race. Because what happens is they tend to do drugs just like on the street. They're very addicted. And next thing you know, they're buying drugs from this person and that person, and they can't pay the bill. And so now it's a riot, and people die in these riots. This is not a game. People get murdered, people get killed in these riots. And so to avoid these riots, we have these rules in place. And these rules save lives. Should you transgress upon that rule and say, I'm going to sell someone some drugs anyway because he's been doing business with me, I know his money good, I'm going to sell it to him, and he doesn't pay you, then that's on you. We're not all going to get involved and risk our lives when you transgress against the rule. You know what the rule was. Rule number 1, do not sell drugs on consignment. Some prisons have it where you can't do drugs at all. Some cars, some shot callers, every yard is different. They're all level 4, 180 yards. However, most yards, they have different rules pertaining to that particular yard. pertaining to that particular car, pertaining to that particular shot caller. Some rules are universal. No snitching, no child molestation, etc. Of course. But there are some other rules that some leaders are not as stringent upon, such as doing drugs, etc. Some yards you hit, they say no drugs because they cause violence. But for the yards where you can do drugs, where the leader says it's okay, make sure you pay your debt. You cannot buy drugs from another race unless you have the money up front. They will say that. Should you transgress upon that and go buy some drugs anyway, and you don't have the money, and they find out about it, you are going to get removed from the yard. That's a violation worthy of a stabbing. Rule number 2, there will be no one-on-one fights. Do not go to prison, a level 4 yard, thinking that you can attack another inmate, another person, your op, your enemy, and that's going to be the end of it. You guys are just going to have a fist fight, and that's going to be it. No, it will never happen, ever. If you attack anyone on the yard, all of his homeboys from his car must join in. They must all then turn around and attack you right then and there, or else. So there will be no one-on-one fights. If you attack someone, be prepared to get the shit beat out of you by all of his homeboys. And if your homeboys are out there, there's just going to be a little riot. No one-on-one fights. Rule number 3, do not disrespect another race or another faction in any way. Respect is very big in prison. Respect is the number 1 thing, in fact. Just like a man in his household, it's the same thing in prison. Respect is number 1. If you disrespect another race, there's going to be a riot, and then you're going to be dealt with on the back end. You must always greet them with respect. Don't get in their way. Don't cut in front of the line. Don't sit at their table. Don't work out in their area. Most people have very little dealings with each other, different races, because the penitentiary is very racist. So they have very little dealings with each other. And when they do have dealings with each other, it's very cordial and it's very respectful. That's to circumvent the potential violence that's always on the forefront. Always there. Rule number 4, if there's no paperwork, you cannot attack. If you suspect someone of being a snitch, a rat, a no-good bastard who couldn't take his time like a man, and so he told on everyone else, if you seen him get on the stand your very self, and you in there and you tell your friend, you tell your car, man, I saw him snitch, bro, he's a snitch. He got on the stand on the homie and got him life in prison, bro. I'm telling you. They're going to tell you, we need the paperwork. We cannot attack anyone for snitching or child molestation or rape without the paperwork. You must show the paperwork. You must have the paperwork. That's a non-negotiable. You cannot transgress against this law. Why is that law in place? There's a reason that all of these laws are in place. These rules are in place. Why? Because there have been times, even on the street, where people have said, man, he's snitching, man, he ain't nothing but a snitch, he a rat. They kill him only to find out later that he was not a snitch. He was being accused of being a snitch because the person that was accusing him had an ulterior motive. He wanted him out the way for whatever reason. But instead of being a man and taking him out the way himself, he got everyone else involved by saying he's a snitch. And so now, there have been situations where I say, man, I know he's a snitch. I know it. Everybody's saying it. Everybody's explaining what happened, why he's a rat. And the law is still the same. The rule is still the same. We cannot do anything to him because we do not have the paperwork. We need paperwork. Once we see the paperwork, the black and white, they call it, then it's all good. Then we can attack him. Until then, no attacking. Rule number 5, there will be no rapists, child molesters, snitches, people who committed crimes against the elderly on the yard. If you beat a woman severely, you cannot come on the yard. And we're going to find out, because people come on the yard and they say, man, I'm not a snitch, I'm not a child molester, or this person lied on me. I was 17 and she was 16 and it wasn't wrong. And we're going to say, no, we saw the paperwork, because we have people working in the program office. And so sometimes people try to slip through. But the person that works in the program office, he sees the paperwork, he reads it, and then he comes back and divulges to us what was in the paperwork. So we know. And once we find out that there's paperwork on the yard and that this person has been a confirmed child molester, a confirmed snitch, a confirmed woman beater, a confirmed rapist, he must leave the yard. With weapons, with a stabbing, he must be attempted at least to be killed. Oftentimes, they are killed. No mercy. Rule number 6, no homosexuals on the yard. Some prisons, level 4, level 2, level 3, there are homosexuals there. You have men in cells with them, older homies, OGs, been locked up 20 years, like, man, I'm just in the cell with them, man, I've been locked up. And it's almost accepted. People talk about them behind their back, but it's accepted. On a level 4 yard, 180, you will never see a homosexual on the yard, ever. I've never seen a homosexual on the yard. They won't let them there. Why is this rule in place? For the same reason that rule number 5 is in place, that no child molesters or rapists or snitches are allowed on the yard. Because people in prison have morals. We are moral people. In fact, you may laugh at that, but we have more morals than some people on the street, because we have a code of conduct that we must live by. And should we not live by that code of conduct, there are repercussions. Out here, you people just doing whatever you want to do. But in there, you're going to abide by certain rules. You're going to inherit these rules. You're going to embody them. They're going to be ingrained in you, and then you're going to begin to live by these rules. And it's going to make you a better, solid person. Every rule on this list applies to every aspect in life. We don't want to taint the yard with rapists and child molesters. We don't want to be around these people. We don't want to hang around them. They're the scum of the earth. If you hang around a snitch, people are going to believe that you're a snitch. Even if you're not, they're going to believe that you are. Why are you hanging around this guy? It makes you look bad. It taints your morality. And so if we're hanging around child molesters and rapists on the yard, working out with them and eating with them, what does that make us? So you can't come around us. We despise child molesters. We despise rapists. We despise crimes against women and the elderly and people who cannot defend themselves. We find that to be very unmanly. You're not a man if you commit a crime against someone who cannot defend themselves. Rule number 7, no stealing. Thieves in prison are on the same level as child molesters and rapists. For some infractions in prison, you get what we call a DP, which stands for discipline. You get a discipline. Man, that you DP him, man, so-and-so need a DP. That's a discipline for something that he did, a rule that he transgressed against, a violation. And so you get a DP. And oftentimes, that's just a 2-on-1. It's never a 1-on-1. It's going to be 2 people from your faction that attacks you, because 2 people attacking you signals to the police that you're the victim, that you're the one that needs to get off the yard. And you're always the one to leave the yard when you're on the receiving end of a 2-on-1 beatdown. But most infractions, such as everyone that's on this list, should you transgress against, should you flout these rules, you will be stabbed or murdered. There will not be a 2-on-1, there will not be a hands-on, there will be a weapons-on. Rule number 8, no gossiping. Let me tell you a quick little story. The prison that I paroled from just last year, April 19th, 2022, level 4, Centinela State Prison. I had a young homeboy up there in his 20s. He got into some trouble up there and went to another prison. He went to Salinas Valley, which I paroled from in October of 2009, a level 4, 180. It's Salinas Valley. He went there. Supposedly, he was gossiping about the homies behind their backs. Oh man, they're not giving me no drugs and they're sharing their canteen with me, etc. The homeboy that he was talking to was a solid homie. He's strong. He lived by these rules. Man, don't come gossiping to me. Go tell these dudes that like a man. Because if not, you're not going to get the proper respect. If you have a problem with a man, same thing for you guys out here on the street. You take it to that person. You approach him man to man. Don't talk about him behind his back. That's why these rules are in place. But the young homie flouted the rule. And so he had a meeting on the yard. Just a regular congregation. And the homie said, hey man, tell the homies what you've been telling me about them. You've been talking about them behind their back. I told you I was going to bring it up. He put them on blast. He said, tell them. The homie said, man, I ain't been saying nothing about them. The homie said, what? Man, you saying I'm lying? That you haven't been talking about them? He got scared and said, man, I ain't been talking about them, because all the homies right there in front of his face now. So the homie fired on him, bam, for saying that he's lying on him. He knocked him out, he fell down, hit his head, and he died. He was still in his 20s. This just happened recently. These rules are in place for a reason. He flouted the rule, he started gossiping, and he ended up losing his life in his 20s on a level 4, 180 yard. Before I go, let me say that the reason I'm making these videos and that I started this show is to help the youth, to help you stay out of prison. As I said in my first video, I went to jail when I was 14 years old. And once you go to jail, it's hard to get out of the system. Once they get their fangs in you, their hooks in you, it's hard to get out of the system. So never go in the system. Focus on your education and building generational wealth. That's where your focus should be. Not on prison, not on jail, not on playing tough out here on these streets. Because you think you're tough until you get into that yard. And believe me, you'll soon find out you're not tough at all. I'm telling you, I'm not hyping it up. I'm certainly not glorifying prison in any way. It's horrible. It's violent. I hate violence. It's wretched. It's dirty. It's gloomy. You miss your family. You miss your freedom. You can't do anything. So I'm not glorifying prison. I hated it. And I want you to avoid it. Circumvent it. Build your life from an early age. Because I started as a criminal in an early age, and it cost me over 22 years in prison. That's my message. That's my message to the youth. You're not ready for prison. Don't go. Nothing is worth it. Build generational wealth. Stay out. High Desert State Prison, Level 4, 180, Part 1, /bloodshed. Coming soon.